Greetings, dreamers. I've been building castles in the sky since our last meeting. Well, not literally. That is a metaphor. It means dreaming up big things, perhaps impossible things. But I'm sure you know, as I do, that something is only impossible until it is accomplished. Nothing is beyond the power of our imaginations. She, Penumbra, and a few other friends are on their way to a mythical city to rest and reinvigorate themselves before continuing on their quest. It's a little vacation, I suppose. A party. And don't we all deserve a little vacation once in a while? Though oftentimes we overplan and try to squeeze too much into our downtime. A break should be revitalizing, so maybe it's better not to do too much. In fact, sometimes it's nice to just do nothing at all. No expectations, no obligations, just rest. Let's turn the page. Chapter 6, Narcissus, her Purifying Song. Everything feels wonderful. She has defeated her enemy, set many unfortunate souls free from the Canyon of Clouds, reclaimed her vital treasures, happened upon some splendorous new baubles, and been reunited with her vulpine companion. Now, she is making swift passage towards this fabled City of Uhy, to which Penumbra has suggested they journey, and from whence Speartooth claims to have originated. Her autumnal garb is crisp and cool, and her shifting countenance feels exceedingly more natural. Change is truly the only universal constant.
The clouds are becoming less substantial,
careful Penumbra observes.
Although my fleet paws have carried us this far, I believe I should have to sprout wings to carry you any further.
She notices that they've stopped on a single puffy cloud, floating all on its own as it drifts away from the denser accumulations. There are a few more nimbus clouds within leaping range, but not enough of them to make it to the next embankment. Then it occurs to her. The Ascendant had told her that no wingless biped but she had been able to walk on clouds. Yet now, without question, four-legged Penumbra is able to tread upon them too. She continues to wonder how much control over this suspicious dream she might actually have when it comes to manifesting her thoughts. But she's been far too distracted to test her boundaries, until now. She shuts her precocious peepers tight.
I think we should try an experiment,
she says.
I'm going to focus really hard and see if I'm able to summon wings for you to fly us over to those distant clouds.
Penumbra is skeptical, and Speartooth bites its tongues to keep from commenting. The vocal seahorse holds its breath. The geckamelion that has decided to tag along curls up on her shoulder and attempts to remain as still as possible. After a few moments of pensive silence, she opens her eyes to see that nothing has changed. To the group's dismay, it seems they have reached the end of their journey.
Well, you'd best make something happen, my dear,
Penumbra says,
as I feel I have hastily chosen this cloud, which is now drifting too far apart from the others for me to retreat, and is slowly thinning out beneath our collective weight.
She recognizes this problem and refocuses, but still, despite her efforts, nothing happens. Then the cloud dissipates, and they fall through. It's only a brief moment of terror that induces the manifestation. Penumbra's hind legs curl up into sharp talons, and her front legs stretch out as velvety wings. Like a bat, Penumbra flaps her new appendages and lifts them back up on course, saying,
I suppose desperate need is a good motivator for your imagination. Admittedly, I had my doubts.
The seahorse honks in agreement.
So did I,
she replies.
That might be why it wasn't happening. It worked because it had to.
Just like you were able to walk on these clouds because I never questioned it. I just assumed you could do it because I was able to do it. Had I not forgotten about what the Ascendant told me, we might have fallen right off the lip of that canyon. I think I'm starting to understand how some of this crazy train works. Awareness of a situation can manipulate the outcome.
Her confidence is growing by the second. Speartooth remains quiet for now, reserving criticism. The Geckamelion decides to take a nap and becomes invisible, adhering its toes to her cuirass and blending in with the autumnal hues. The seahorse hums a pleasing tune, while Penumbra soars majestically over the peak of the next dense cloud formation. Beyond it is an enormous cumulonimbus that wraps around and hides most of a massive vertical structure from view. A castle in the sky, cloaked in fog, is looming before them. It is constructed of various reflective metals, with gears, cogs, pipes, and valves. This is the arcane City of Uhy.
Penumbra, it was your idea to come here, so what can you tell me about this place? For I've never heard of Uhy.
Speartooth's heads look at one another, but say nothing. The air is turning cold, and her question echoes, somehow amplified by the slowly frosting clouds. It stirs up a sultry wind, the final warmth from autumn's dying breath for Penumbra to glide upon. Penumbra contemplates her question.
I can't remember now why I thought of it, or where I ever even heard of it. Strangely, I feel as though the idea was whispered into my mind. I didn't question it, not for a second. It was just there.
She is beginning to feel the mental weight of all she has been experiencing. Her head throbs. She wonders if Penumbra is feeling the same way.
Well then, maybe it is by providence that we came here, and that you were divinely inspired.
The thin head of Speartooth remarks, finally breaking their paired silence. They descend through the dark, swirling clouds and land atop the stoop before a massive metal door with an eagle emblazoned upon it. There are no noticeable handles or even a lock. There is a silver statue of a waiting bird, a dignified spoon-billed heron, just to the right of the door. Penumbra's wings transform back into legs, and her talons into paws. She walks over to the bird statue and pushes down on its long, shapely beak. Aged sounds of rusty old cranks and pulleys come from behind the great door as it rises like a portcullis.
Clever, Penumbra.
She raises an eyebrow.
But I suppose that is what should be expected from a fox.
The seahorse trumpets with pleasure. What could possibly be behind such a magnificent door?
Regardless of expectation,
Penumbra replies.
it is always nice to know that one's skills do not go unrecognized.
They step across the threshold into the city beyond. The cranks and pulleys of the huge door grind to a halt, and everything is silent but for a musty gust passing through some shadowy pillars. There is very little ambient light within, and except for a couple of freestanding braziers, each glowing with a haunting yellow orb, there is no means for her to discern what awaits them in the mysterious maze beyond. There are elegantly designed mosaics along the walls and floor. Some are abstract geometric patterns, while others display representational fragments of some glorious historic epic. The invisible Geckamelion clinging to her cuirass repositions itself. She can feel its tiny feet releasing their suction. Speartooth becomes tense, turning stiff. As they navigate, using the dim light sneaking between pillars, they are startled by many golden statues of what appear to be monkeys. Most of them are wearing small winged helmets. Each simian effigy is dressed distinctively and carrying some type of tool. She can feel Speartooth shuddering in her hand, That is when it occurs to her to address the obvious. She looks down at her serpentine bow.
So, Speartooth,
She inquires.
when exactly are you going to tell us what you know about this place you claim is your home? Or shall we just wait until we find out for ourselves?
Speartooth scoffs at this nervously, preparing to grovel.
Well, we were waiting for you to ask, of course.
The fatter head responds. The thinner head stutters a bit.
What exactly would you like to know? Truthfully, this wasn't our first home, but we did live here for a little while.
Clearly, the two-headed snake is nervous about something. But why? She speculates while quietly examining the walls that stretch behind the pillars leading up to a central platform, upon which there is an ornate throne, adorned with flowers and twinkling dream stars. She follows one of the mosaic narratives, dragging her left hand across the shiny tesserae. She sees that the subject in all of the representations resembles her. As she approaches the throne, she perceives that these images are telling the story of her crazy adventures, both past and, as of yet, unfulfilled. She becomes much more suspicious of Speartooth now.
Curious that they should know about me here.
She steps up to the dazzling chair and sees a single musical note, which she immediately recognizes, carved into the throne's crest. She doesn't even consider the consequences. She pulls forth the seahorse and puts it to her lips. The compulsion to play it is too strong for her to ignore.
No!
Speartooth protests, but it's too late. The inspired note rings long and loud all through the city of Uhy, and in a brilliant flash, the populace awakens. Lamps ignite, trumpets sound, and the celebration begins. The clamor is like nothing she has ever heard. She covers her ears and clutches her already throbbing head. Fireworks burst from the ceiling, and every statue springs to life, shouting with joy. Yahoo! She has come. The ancient prophecy is fulfilled. Yahoo! Their chittering voices amass into a collective din as they surround her to pay gleeful homage to their reluctant savior. She can sense anxious Speartooth's discomfort, even after having stealthily hidden her bow on the ground in the shadow of the throne. She turns around to receive the praises of hundreds of golden primates. Confetti is falling, drums are pounding, and a veritable parade of these elated beings erupts throughout the streets. They pick her up and carry her around, all the while playing music and shouting, Yahoo! Glory to she who has awoken us from the shadow's slumber. Yahoo! She can't concentrate on what's happening because her head aches, and she's becoming very dizzy. Within a few moments, the apes have juggled her all around the city. They bring her back to where she started and toss her onto the throne. She sits there, quite disoriented, surrounded by and draped in copious offerings. One of the golden monkeys, wearing suspenders and holding a hammer, looks at her and asks, chimpishly,
Yahoo! You do not look very well. What, pray tell, is the matter with you?
I have a terrible headache.
she responds while massaging her temples. Another golden monkey leaps up behind her, removes her conical hat, and replaces it with a copper crown. There is a trilliant-cut turquoise dream star set within the circlet. Bold outlines of pellucid silver antlers protrude from both sides of the brow band, just above her ears. Almost immediately, her headache is gone. and she looks around at the party that is being thrown on her behalf. She is shocked to see that some of the monkeys have captured and bound poor Penumbra. They are hastily preparing to cook the fox in a boiling pot.
What are you doing with my friend? Release my fox this instant.
Despite being a stranger to this realm and its denizens' customs, she believes that it should always be considered poor manners to eat beneficent visitors. She stands up from the throne. Wearing the royal crest makes her appear much more intimidating. The monkeys all gasp. Frightened by her bold commandment, they quickly cut Penumbra loose and apologize profusely. Then, the primates become embroiled in finger-pointing and casting blame upon one another for their gross indiscretion. Penumbra walks over to the throne, slumps down beside her, and thanks her for talking the golden monkeys out of a boiled fox supper. She wants to ask them so many questions about their city and their ape culture, but she never has a chance. They're all too caught up in bombarding her with their own queries and trivial concerns, believing that their Yahoo, as they have taken to calling her, has all of the answers.
No wonder this City of Uhy is such a mysterious place.
She thinks aloud.
Nobody can get a word in edgewise to ask these monkeys anything about it.
She attempts to humor every inquiry. There is one clumsy monkey with a crutch who is in love, but alas, this affection is unrequited. There is another who is hapless and depressed. Overeating has made this sad simian very fat and unpleasantly flatulent. There is yet another who is annoyingly verbose, pontificating about epic exploits and asking if she thinks such tales worthy of a novel. One offers to have a group of flunky monkeys groom her and cater to her every whim. She tactfully refuses this municipal service, becoming rather irritated by the incessant primate prattle. Another ape wants to introduce her to the most important monkeys in the city, and to give her a tour of the finest places. They are all flatterers. While she believes them to be sincere, it seems they are exalting her out of fear rather than respect or love. There's a lot of quibbling going on between several noisy groups, which she tries to settle amicably. Some are shamelessly greedy. Others are crude, exploitative, and lack any sense of morality. She feels like they are all mentally unstable. At any moment they could rise into a furry frenzy and go completely mad. A golden statue of a hunting dog is placed beside her as a showing of loyalty, and more flowers are cast over her. Some of them flit into her slack-jawed mouth. She just can't take it anymore. She grabs Speartooth and stands to leave. As she does this, another collective gasp rises from the entire crowd. Every pair of primate peepers stares in disbelief. Speartooth looks up at her.
Well?
Her bow speaks in shame-filled unison, surprised that it took this long.
I guess your party is over now.
Before she can demand an explanation, things turn bad. The monkeys begin taking back both their gifts and their flattery. Some even hurl them at her, along with angry reactionary words like traitor, heathen, and Zorn sympathizer.
What did you do?
She asks Speartooth. Her bow doesn't have a chance to answer before the rabid monkeys pile on top of her and strip her of her things. Penumbra tries to push them off, but the apes are too strong and there are far too many of them. Shrieking and howling erupts from every corner of the city as the golden primates pour down through the pipe-packed rafters, each of them bent upon punishing the heretic outsiders for trespassing into their domain. Word must travel fast in the City of Uhy. Penumbra leaps between the pillars, shaking off monkeys as they land on her back and tug at her fur. Each angry ape that manages to cling takes a vicious bite, and she swats them away. Obviously, they are hungry for fresh meat. Being steadfast, brave, and unwavering in her sense of duty, Penumbra digs in and starts to wade through the tumult in search of She. They should never have come to this place. Buried up to her eyeballs in golden pelage and receiving slap after open-handed slap to the face, she realizes that Penumbra is in far greater danger than herself. She musters a brief magical strength to shake free from the accumulating pile of primates and shouts to get her vulpine friend's attention.
Penumbra, to me! Let's meet in the middle!
The fox heeds her call, racing towards the sound of her voice. They soon converge and join forces.
I think we made a mistake in coming here.
Penumbra laments.
Whatever diabolical sorcery planted that thought in my brain is to blame. How could I have been so easily manipulated?
She feels her fox friend's guilt as though it were her own. The connection they share is becoming stronger. Together, they are a force to be reckoned with. Their defensive movements fall into synchronization as they deflect wave after wave of angry apes.
We can't keep this up forever.
She shouts.
We need to take up the high ground, or we're going to drown in monkey madness.
Hop on!
Penumbra barks.
Let's try to outmaneuver this simian swarm.
She leaps up onto her stoic steed's shoulders, and they bound through the mob.
I'll make for the entrance. Try to keep them off my back till we get there.
The fox's focus narrows as they penetrate the throng. She tussles with and dispatches any feral monkeys that drop down from the ceiling pipes. She senses grave worry coming from Penumbra.
What's wrong? Is our egress being blocked by an impregnable ape army?
She asks.
That's not the problem.
The fox replies.
I think the city has moved. All of those cranks and gears we heard when we opened the door, I suspect that Uhy must reorient itself according to the time, like a giant residential clock. Our route of escape has been closed off.
At that moment, a particularly peckish primate bites down on Penumbra's tail.
Arrgh!
She wallops the monkey off of her friend's bushy posterior and sees the bite mark it left behind. In that moment, she realizes that Penumbra won't survive if they stay much longer. With no regard for her own life, she summons up powerful emotions to reverse the clockwork of Uhy. It works! Everything is thrown off balance. Monkeys go tumbling every which way, and the door they entered through reopens. She springs from Penumbra's back, directly into the center of the disoriented fray.
I'll keep the mob at bay. Go! Save yourself!
This course of action seems rash, even to her, but something deep down inside tells her that her work is not finished here. She must remain in order to solve the mystery of why and by whom they were summoned to Uhy.
Fly, Penumbra!
She cries, and out of desperate need her steed sprouts wings once more. Penumbra swoops back in with hind claws agape, trying to pry she loose from her assailants, but to no avail. Several of the enraged golden monkeys jump onto Penumbra's back, attempting to pull the flying fox down.
Flee!
She wails.
Live to fight another day!
Her insistence demands obedience. The brave fox is reluctant to comply, but also recognizes sound advice upon hearing it. Staying will only mean being eaten, and so Penumbra shakes loose the antagonized apes that are feverishly clinging to her fur and soars out the front door, just as the mad mob slams it shut behind her. Hovering for a moment and looking down at the clockwork city, Penumbra sheds a single silver tear of regret for having brought them there. That suggestion, which had invaded her mind, may well have sealed she's fate. The silver teardrop becomes a fish and swims off into the lonely night sky. Before it can travel very far, though, it freezes and then wafts slowly downward through the void of perpetual space below. A gentle snow begins to fall. Penumbra flies away, seeking shelter and a safe place to consider a new course of action. Wherever it may be, the forlorn fox hopes that somehow she will figure out a way to escape and meet her there. Back inside the city of Uhy, the incensed riot of golden primates is dragging she off to their dungeon. Of course, they never spot the invisible Geckamelion, sneakily leaping from her armored shoulders and slinking in between them. After passing through a series of iron gates and locked vaults, the mob carries her down a narrow hallway lined with rusty cages. They throw her into the next-to-last cell on the right and toss Speartooth in with her, but only after they haphazardly extract her trinity of dream stars. They lock the door behind her with a glowing emerald key and heckle her briefly before leaving her there to rot. She's confounded by her situation and is just about to crossly interrogate Speartooth when a chipper voice addresses her serpentine bow from the adjoining jail cell.
Speartooth, is that you?
A small, stout, bearded fellow wearing a floppy coxcomb dangling with little bells and dressed like a motley artificer with smudges of worn-off clown makeup on his nose and cheeks, waddles over and peers through the metal bars.
Ha! I can't believe it. I thought the apes tossed you out. Who is this you've brought with you?
She takes the tiny fellow for a gnome. He is about 3 feet tall, and that's counting the hat, which constitutes a quarter of his total height. His whiskers are bright orange, and his skin is a pleasant shade of berry blue.
Tumbles! We are so glad to find you are still alive.
Speartooth rejoices together.
Old master, meet new master. She gave us stars and saved us from eating ourselves.
The gnome named Tumbles examines her closely.
She. Well, that was very kind of you. So my old treasure has become yours now. Finders keepers, am I right?
She has no response to this.
Yes, I brought this twisted twosome to Uhy after one of my scientific excavations. I am I'm a digger, you see. I'm also a scholar. That's why the facets keep me around. I'm the only one here that can read the scrolls of Zorn. They've locked me up, so I'm basically a slave, which I find rather hypocritical considering they were all once slaves to the Zorn before they built their sky machines and escaped from their oppressors. I heard them shouting, "Yahoo!" through the walls. I guess they've decided you're the one prophesied to lead them to war against their most bitter enemy. I assume it was you that woke them from the curse of golden sleep before they tossed you in here with me. So, are you aligned with Zorn or Gidak's facets?
She opens her mouth to answer, but before she can speak, she sees the glowing green key to her cell seemingly slip between the bars on its own accord and set itself down right beside her. The covert lizard materializes behind her leg so that only she can see it, and smiles up at her. She smiles back in gratitude as the helpful reptile turns invisible once again. She holds the emerald key up to her face. Tumbles makes a gleeful noise, leaps and clicks his heels together.
Oh me, oh my! What deft hands or sneaky magic you must have to conjure up the key. Now we can escape. You will take me with you, won't you? After all, had I not unearthed Speartooth so long ago, you might never have come here. Am I right?
Tumbles is obviously gambling, playing on her sympathies in the hopes that she will take pity on him. He seems like a nice enough fellow.
Well, I suppose...
She begins, but Tumbles cuts her off before she has a chance to figure out what she might be agreeing to.
Great!
Tumbles blurts.
I know a way into the armory where we can retrieve something of mine. We'll need it if we're going to escape. Did the facets take anything of yours?
She nods, realizing by now that facets must mean the insane mob of golden monkeys.
All right then. Unlock our cages and follow me. We need to get to it before they find out that you've stolen the key. By the way, you still haven't answered my previous question. Are you, by any chance, a spy for Zorn? Or do your allegiances lie with Gidak?
The little blue gnome grins snidely.
No, I really have no idea what...
Tumbles cuts her off again.
Oh, it's all right. Secret missions can remain hush-hush if you prefer not to discuss them. I'm not nosy. I'm actually really glad that you showed up when you did. I might have starved down here while those apes slept. Luckily, rainwater leaks in through these stones and, well, you don't want to know what I've been eating. Ugh.
She unlocks their cages, slides the green key into her belt line, picks up Speartooth, who feels diminished now that the stars have been removed, and lets the Geckomelion silently crawl back up onto her armor. She follows Tumbles through a secret passage at the end of the long dungeon hallway. It opens directly into a weapons vault.
I know what you're thinking.
Tumbles winks.
Having a passageway that leads straight from the dungeon into an arsenal might not be the best idea.
He chuckles. His cap bells jingle and his belly jiggles.
I told them that when they were building it, but they ignored me. For being intelligent, they sure like common sense. Like throwing a serpent in a cage when it can fit through the bars. Do you know they spent years building a legion of copper robots just to protect Uhy in the event of their extermination by the Zorn? Drudgers is what they call them. They were specifically designed only to awaken after the final facet has fallen down dead. But I ask you, why? Why bother guarding Uhy if they're all gone? It makes no sense. They believe the threat posed by their lethal inventions will be enough to discourage Zorn from attacking them. Honestly, I think the brutal telepathic torture they suffered under the evil mages of Zorn must have scrambled their minds, driving them all crazy. I'm surprised they can work together at all. If it weren't for Gidak, they'd be extinct by now.
This Gidak must be quite a leader. She surveys the vault and is glad to find and reacquire all of her confiscated things. Her quiver of regenerating green arrows, her seahorse cornet who squeaks excitedly upon seeing her, the ruby from Gleam, and her other 2 stars, the golden green headlamp of Grouper, and the bright sapphire from Stargazer's lantern. She even happens upon the crown that the Facets had given to her, which has the turquoise Dream Star embedded in its brow wreath. She glances over at Tumbles and notices him struggling to lift up a massive shining hammer 3 times his height that is resting against the cold limestone wall. She then feels the invisible Geckomelion leap out from under her left pauldron. She hears it drop and go scuffling about amid some scrolls on the far side of the room.
You know,
Tumbles grunts.
Ever since the shadow of the crow passed over this city and put all of the Facets to sleep, I've just been waiting to die in that wretched cage. Then you arrived and woke them up, and now you're helping me escape. It all sounds like fate to me. I owe you my life, and since I cannot impart that to you, Speartooth will have to suffice.
Upon saying this, Tumbles manages to tilt the big hammer upright, using all of his might, and he holds it aloft, allowing its magical energy to imbue and transform him. She is stunned to see the tiny gnome grow, tearing out of his wee clothes. Within seconds, Tumbles is a giant.
Now, I'll create a diversion with my whammy hammer, and you can make a run for it.
Tumbles bellows as he begins to laugh maniacally.
I've been waiting to do this for a long time.
The giant gnome winds up, swings, and knocks down the armory wall with one powerful blast. She would much rather have at least tried to make a surreptitious departure, but it's too late for that now. She darts out of the rubble and speeds through the city's alleyways, realizing that she has no practical escape plan without a flying penumbra. Her proclivity to stick around and fulfill some clandestine purpose has fallen from her favor as swiftly as it arose. Hordes of angry monkeys come screaming into the streets and rush like a golden flood towards the devastated armory. She leaps over the oncoming throng, using her swift boots of leaping to bounce from shiny helmet to hairy back. She avoids each swiping paw and every prehensile tail. Eventually, she succeeds in hurdling the entire mob and looks back to see Tumbles laying waste to wave after wave of the apes. Golden monkeys are flying in all directions, smashing into pillars and rolling into walls. The mighty gnome is going berserk and laughing heartily as he punishes those who have long kept him captive. She feels this whole situation is unfortunate and that it could have easily been avoided. She doesn't want to squander the opportunity Tumbles is giving her, though, so she turns around and runs for the entryway. But before she reaches her destination, the portcullis lifts on its own, and a frightful shadow is cast across the threshold. Standing stalwart in the vestibule, so terrifying that it chases its own shadow away, a chimeric Goliath is ominously revealed. Drums announce the arrival of the titanic creature. It is a cross between a lion and an eagle, with some mechanical parts thrown into the mix. It steps through the narthex, ducking low to enter the simian city. She stumbles backward and hears the commotion behind her cease. All the facets stop fighting with Tumbles the Titan and bow in worship to this colossal monstrosity.
I was wondering when you would wake from the shadow slumber, Gidak.
Tumbles shouts.
Now we can finally settle it.
Gidak speaks in a voice as deafening as a thunderclap.
I have come to see Uhy, not play games with the likes of you.
The winged lion looks at she, its steely gaze piercing with the keenness of a lance.
If you are truly the one, despite your apparent soaring sympathies, who has come to lead us to war against our mortal enemy, then you must prove yourself in battle against me.
She is hesitant to summon Pusaka. In fact, she has been resisting the desire to call upon it ever since she last put the primeval weapon away. For some reason, she feels that this is not the right time. She stokes up her moxie and bravely approaches Gidak. Then, she addresses the entire city of Uhy in a stentorian voice.
I will not draw forth my sword, for its very manifestation would declare my desire to spill your blood and leave this city in ruin. I have no such intention. Despite the confusing behavior of the apish denizens of Uhy, I wish you no harm. I would like to understand you better. I am not here to lead anyone into a war. I am not this Uhy you speak of, so far as I know. I have been called She by my own shadow, and Nephelebata by my teacher, the Ascendant. I am a traveler and a seeker. I am not your enemy, and I am not a spy for those who once enslaved you.
She feels good about what she has just said, and hopes that Gidak is a reasonable beast. That's when the titanic creature visibly prepares to pounce, looking like an overgrown house cat, wiggling its furry rump.
I admire your attempt at diplomacy, Yahoo.
Gidak says, passing her words off as clever subterfuge.
But it will not save you from me. I am the protectorate of these, my golden subjects. I must consider them first, above all. A test of might is what they require in order to prove your worthiness to lead them into an otherwise unwinnable war. If you are indeed the Exalted One, then you should have no problem dispatching me. This is my dutiful sacrifice. Step aside, sweetheart.
Tumbles calls to her.
This one is mine.
Gidak roars and leaps over her head. The two enormous warriors whistle loud like locomotives as they crash together, meeting with a reverberating boom that breaks some of the supporting pillars and begins leveling the city. The facets flee in chaotic terror while these unnatural forces collide. Tumbles snorts and stomps. His visage is gradually transforming through supernatural means into that of a thick-skinned humanoid rhinoceros. She sees many of the golden monkeys flying out of the front door on swift, steam-powered skiffs and skyrockets. Of course, they had to get up here somehow, and Tumbles mentioned that they'd built sky machines to escape from those who had enslaved them. This is her way out. She dashes about, searching for a skiff to steal or to stow away on. The two titans continue to battle, scattering so much concussive force that any apes in close proximity are shattered like glass. She absorbs some of the power they're displacing as it shakes through her armor. She sees an unattended rocket off to the right of a collapsed pillar that has sadly crushed 3 unlucky monkeys while they were attempting to escape from the ensuing disaster. She mounts the rickety-looking sky vehicle and examines its control panel. Then, she is again overcome by a sense of responsibility. She realizes that if she doesn't do something, in a few moments, Uhy will be no more, and it will be all her fault for having come here in the first place. She briefly considers invoking the terrible wrath of Pusaka, but instead opts for the briny bluster of her seahorse horn. Tumbles has almost completely transfigured at this point, and Gidak's angelic wings have yet to lose a feather. She dismounts the rocket and confronts the 2 gargantuan rivals. She holds her sentient instrument aloft and blows with all of her might. The blast of strident sound knocks both of the colossal brutes back and breaks a deep fissure in the mosaic floor. A liquid rainbow comes spewing upward like a painted geyser from out the widening crack, refracting glorious colors all over the nearly ruined city. She has no chance to react. She falls through the yawning gap, sliding down the rainbow as though it were a wide ribbon of prismatic silk. The colored wavelengths separate and reform into a twisting ladder that trickles through her fingers like water when she tries to grab a hold of it. It turns a vibrant pink hue, the color of carnations. She falls forever, drifting in and out of herself, as time backbuilds to transform space and thought into all manner of warped visions and reflective images. She imagines the two juggernauts in the city above shaking hands and calling a truce. She sees all of the facets coming together to rebuild their ruined home. Perhaps her purifying song made a difference. She can picture Penumbra flying over snow-capped mountains, gliding on freezing winds, and descending towards a crystalline structure. She envisions the Stargazer, standing beside an awakening sun bear. Her final fleeting thought is of a storm cloud full of black birds. They are locked in a tight triangular formation as they approach. Suddenly, she snaps out of it. Her fall has ended. She is lying atop a glistering golden mound. Strewn all around her is a cornucopia of untold treasure, housed within a dome cathedral built of polished yellow bricks and stained glass windows draped with ivy. The ceiling has a circular opening that resembles the pupil of an all-seeing eye. There are myriad passageways leading off in every direction. In the center of the treasure pile, there is a great clock, half buried in gold and other precious things. Its aged face displays a strangely familiar spiral symbol. The timepiece is broken, so the hands are no longer in motion. Time has stopped here.
We're sorry.
Her bow apologizes in its unified voice.
We should have told you about all the trouble before we got here. We would never condone what our cold-blooded Zorn cousins did to those poor apes. That's why we have been cursed. We helped them to escape long ago. We were not always as you see us now. We needed to come back to find Master Tumbles. It was our fault he was imprisoned, you see?
She grips Speartooth firmly and nods in acceptance of the sorry serpent's sincere apology. Her first 3 dream stars shimmer from within the Duophidian's body. There had been just enough time for Speartooth to gulp them up before Tumbles went on his rampage.
Thank you, Master Shi. We do so appreciate your kindness, despite our tendency to not always be forthcoming. It's a bad habit.
She hears scuffling coming from one of the many passageways. Her immediate reaction is to give an arrow to Speartooth. She scans her surroundings. The clatter seems to move further away, and so she relaxes. Then, just as she drops her guard, a wee periwinkle mouse leaps up beside her onto a chunk of broken pillar from Uhy. The rodent twitches its tiny nose, bristling with whiskers.
Good afternoon.
The curious mouse speaks and politely bows.
Or evening. Or morning, for that matter. I guess we really have no way of knowing, since the bygone timepiece is broken, now do we? Charmed one.
She looks down at the rodent and is reminded of something. A faint memory of finding a mouse underneath her bed one night. She was a little bit startled, but she could tell the tiny varmint was more afraid than she was. So, she carefully caught the critter, took it out of the house, and let it go free in their garden. The memory fades as quickly as it arrived.
Where exactly are we?
She asks the polite pipsqueak.
We are in the space that time forgot. The absolute center of the universe. Some would call it nowhere. To the initiated, it is called the Gazing Chamber. I am one of its guardians, though I do not normally reside herein. When a portal into the chamber is created, I am called upon to defend it. That's why I'm here now. Sure, I know a mouse doesn't seem like much of a safeguard against intruders, but I assure you, I am quite adept at setting and springing traps. By the way, that single-note song you played is what delivered the chamber here. It also soothed those savage beasts who were fighting. But now, like moths drawn to the proverbial flame, others will come. Some to worship you, some to be healed by you, and some will seek you out just to witness your miraculous nature. The real nitwits will show up to challenge you as a test of their fortitude. Just remember, awareness of your situation will give you control over the eventual outcome. Remain vigilant, and you might avoid all the believers and the heretics alike. Prepare thyself.
The mouse scampers down off the pillar from Uhy and motions for her to follow.
Yes, indeed. The word is out. Now that you know, that they know, they will almost certainly come.
She feels a chill run down her spine at the thought of being simply nowhere.
Something about this place. It makes me feel so alone.
You are never alone,
says the mouse.
so long as love endures, 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 endures.
That was pretty crazy, huh? I never would have expected all of that. But I suppose when we're dreaming, we should expect the unexpected. After all of that uproarious celebrating and then all of the destruction that followed, I could really use some quiet time. Autumn's final leaves are starting to fall, and the air is growing sharp, cold. Soon it will be time to go find a blanket and curl up by the fire with a good book. Until the next time we meet, I wish you peace, love, and thunderstorms. Farewell, dreamers.